Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings as I try to record this for the third time. So, firstly I need to apologize for late postings several times over the last couple of weeks, and for the late posting today, which is due to a great many technical difficulties. Hopefully at some point, maybe with this video, I'll have even wrestled this all into submission. It is actually way later than I wanted to be doing this, but what can you do? This week's Cat Who book is The Cat Who Lived High, as always, of course, by Lilian Jackson Braun. And as I have said already twice before in two failed videos, I'm sorry, I'm extremely incensed by the genuine failure of these to record properly. Hopefully I fixed it this time. Because honestly, recording two 15-minute videos eats up about a half an hour, and prep time eats up another 10 minutes, and it's not that I have a lot of prep, it's just that in between videos you close things because you don't want to have 83 windows open. Anyways, you're not interested, and this book is, this book has the return of Qwillerin to the big city. You may remember that I talked about how we've now gotten Qwillerin settled in Pickaxe, where we have the regular cast of characters, the people that we recognize, Arch Riker, Polly Duncan, Chief Brody, who I have mentioned specifically because those are the three Pickaxe characters. Oh, yes, and his lawyer from Hasselrich and whatever they call themselves, his law firm in Pickaxe. You'll pardon me. I've been doing this so many times, and the rabbits in here are affecting my allergies, so my voice is shot. So, what happens is Qwillerin gets a call from a character from previous books, Amberina, who is one of the three weird sisters who owned a antiques shop that, if you have read The Cat Who Turned On and Off, you may vaguely remember them as the crazy sister, the relatively sane sister, and the man-hungry sister. And Amberina, who is one of the three, phones Qwillerin up to ask him if he will put the millions that he inherited from Aunt Fanny in the Klingon Fund to helping her restore a building called the Casablanca. Now, the Casablanca is a massive Art Deco edifice, a former apartment building that was built back in the 1920s, and the woman who owns it is 75 and never leaves her apartment, and clearly wants to isolate herself up there and pretend that it's still 1932. She still dresses like it's 1932. She still acts like it's 1932. And when people try to communicate with her about the fact that the building is falling apart, about the fact that she'll have to move out at some point, about what will happen to the building, all of these things, she basically just stonewalls them and does that, you know, and does that thing where people basically stonewall you and pretend that they can't understand you because they're refusing to listen well enough to actually understand you. It's something that Qwillerin discovers because since he was recruited to do this, he has, of course, gotten a chance to have a speech with her ladyship, the Countess, as I said, as she's known. And while he's there, he charms her. He does the old massive Qwillerin charm. He learns to play Scrabble, which I find it difficult to credit that someone like Qwillerin doesn't know how to play Scrabble, but apparently he learns in this book. Who knew? And he learns to play Scrabble for the purpose of charming her, and she falls in love, finds him instantly very, very charming, and he manages to give people the story that he starts working himself up to the idea of writing a book, as he does every second book in this series. In this case, writing a book about the Casablanca, sort of a big coffee table book with glossy pictures of the Casablanca in its heyday, and having interviews with people who lived there and have, important, amazing memories of the place. And all of that charms her, but when he starts trying to talk to her about getting the Klingenschon Fund to buy it, about trying to get the whole place renovated, she, A, chooses to misunderstand him and looks around her beautifully appointed, if overwhelmingly Baroque, in a Art Deco sort of way apartment, going, "But my place is lovely. What else do we need to do?" And when he tries to talk about the outside world, she just shuts down. And that's one of the big conflicts in this, is Qwillerin is somewhat interested in purchasing it. The Klingenschon Fund agrees to purchase it, but it's not just a matter of putting an offer on the table, it's a matter of convincing the woman who owns it to sell it. And so what she turns out to be, though, is kind of a microcosm of the greater macrocosm, which is, yes, the building is going to get knocked down if somebody doesn't go to the effort of preserving it. The Penniman's and their firms are already moving in for the Qwill. They're already putting up advertisements with artistic renditions of what their brand new building will look like, with half of their brand new building already on that it would be on what is still the Casablanca lot. And they're already advertising it as though it's a done deal, which is overconfident and makes Qwillerin's hackles raise a little bit. But the thing is that she doesn't want to move out because it's her home. It's where she's always lived, and it's a place that she loves. And so many of the people there also don't want to move out. And it's something that doesn't really get said until the very end of the book. But if Qwillerin, if it isn't bought by somebody who wants to preserve it, it's going to be destroyed. Yes, it's going to be knocked down and replaced. But at the end of the book, Qwillerin is faced with the other dilemma, which is, if he buys it, if they restore it, if they put it back to its former glory and reinstall all of the gold leaf and the chandeliers, if they reinstate all of the, put in all of the new wiring, it's going to be worth a bundle. It's going to be worth a fortune. The rental costs will skyrocket, and the people who live there now, who are the elderly who've always lived there, who are too poor to move elsewhere, who are poor students who can't afford to live elsewhere because they're on student budgets, all of these people are going to have to move somewhere else. They'll have to leave this place that they love because they won't be able to afford it anymore. And it's this strange push-pull of progress versus not progress, and the fact that there are always people who get left behind no matter what you do, that kind of exists in parts of this book, at the center, hovering in the background in this book. Now, I wouldn't say it's about that. This book is mostly about Qwillerin battling the elevator, about Qwillerin battling with various people to get their attention, about Qwillerin trying to avoid the drunken ramblings of the semi-suicidal alcoholic woman a couple of floors down, about Qwillerin dealing with the fact that Coco insists on digging up the carpet, and of course Qwillerin solving the murder of the woman who owned the apartment before him. And he certainly, of course, digs into her death and asks uncomfortable questions, as he does. And visits the press club, which has changed as everything else in the city has. And Qwillerin is forced to come face to face with the fact that he is no longer a big city boy. He is now thoroughly ensconced in the country and could not imagine permanently moving back to the city anyways. I find Arch Riker's I told him at the beginning of the book, when they have that cold open that I so object to, because frankly, I'm not a big fan of cold opens in books. I'm not a big fan of cold opens generally, but this particular cold open in the book feels particularly awkward because it's nothing to do with Qwillerin, and you know these books are entirely from Qwillerin's perspective, except for these brief moments when the book when Lilian Jackson Braun will sometimes decide to just choose to write the book from a third-person perspective. I assume from the convenience that while we are certainly dealing with third-person narration, it is not omniscient third-person narration, it's Qwillerin omniscient narration. And so it's always odd when the books leave Qwillerin's perspective, and jarring and certainly noteworthy, and it gets your attention when the book opens with everyone flailing over his supposed death. And it's certainly very entertaining when Arch Riker shows up at the end of the book to go into this apartment Qwillerin has rented going, "Qwill? You're supposed to be dead!" Which is doubly interesting because, of course, Qwillerin was just attacked and just nearly died. But the most harrowing thing in this book is not the corruption that went so far as to murder the woman who otherwise would have inherited the building and had been the strongest proponent of the renovation project, and the fact that he also murdered her lover, who probably didn't deserve it, and framed him, which means that the lover probably also didn't deserve to have been framed, even if he was dead. And, you know, there is that. But the most harrowing thing is the way that at the end of the book, Qwillerin is torn, as I said, because you have these people who, if he fixes the building up, they have to leave. But if he doesn't, they still have to leave. But what's really harrowing is that moment at the end when it's all taken out of his hands. He's woken up in the middle of the night by Coco, who's freaking out, and he grabs Arch Riker, and they run out of the building, and they get out, and they get in a cab, and they're driving away. And the top of the building literally explodes. Somebody planted a bomb between the 12th and the 14th floor, which makes more sense when you remember that most buildings don't have a 13th floor because 13 is bad luck, and this building, like many others, went straight from 12 to 14. So somebody planted a bomb in the crawl space between the 12th and the 14th floors, and the building literally blows up. And it takes all of this discussion out of everybody's hands. It forces the Countess out of the building. It destroys everything, and we leave, like Qwillerin, not knowing who's made it out and who hasn't. And it's just this tremendous moment as Qwillerin speaks his belief that this was arranged by Flood, who is one of the partners of the Penniman's, that this was arranged to just finally deal with this building and get it out of the way. And it's the most harrowing part in this reflection on how far people will go sometimes. And it ends this book on a particularly dark note. Rereading these books with an eye to more analysis, I've been surprised how dark they actually get, all things considered, for the fluff that they are. And that's everything, and I'll see you next week.